start out this panel with a bit of a tough one. Has there been a time when you have felt, or others have made you feel like you have imposter syndrome because of your gender, and how do you navigate through that, and what advice do you have?
Trish and I already had a conversation about this question because for us in stats, it's a very, very different experience to our referees particularly. So go back to 1983, I was playing, so I just want to point that out. Michelle, I played before Michelle, and I played the game, Bankstown, and then after that I would jump on to the men's game to do the stats. And that was the days where we did paper stats. And I got pretty good at it. I tinkered with refereeing for a while and also did some coaching when I was in the States. But hated that because it felt too much like being a teacher. You know, that's my other life, is being a teacher, and I'd be a teacher all day telling kids to be quiet and then go on court and telling kids to be quiet again. So, but Lorraine Landon then asked me, we had the Women's World Cup in 1994, and Lorraine Landon asked me to look after stats, and we knew we were going to have computerised stats, which was going to be a bit of a shock for us. And my biggest concern was there was no manual, there was no document, so it was all about us trying to imagine what we understood an assist was, or what we happened to do a rebound was. So we formed a national committee and basically wrote our stats manual. We wrote our definitions. And I'd just like to point out that the definitions that we wrote back in 1993 were taken by FIBA, and if you were to look at the document that FIBA has written, it is absolutely a replica of what we did in Australia here in 1993. And so in saying that, we became the knowledgeable ones. There wasn't anybody up there was no male that was telling me what to do, because I was the one that had written this document. And then following me came colleagues like Trish, once again female, and where was the big power base for stats? It was in New South Wales. It was particularly in Sydney, but it was in New South Wales. We were the ones that were creating all these documents. We were creating new courses because there was nothing there. And so I can't say I felt like an imposter, because we were the bossy ones, and we've continued to be the bossy ones. So it really is quite different to experience that our colleagues have as referees, because there is no man telling me what to do, and there has never been a man telling me what to do, and so it's made it pretty easy. And then I've had all these wonderful other colleagues like Trish come through, because really it is the women that are organised. I think that referees spoke about that. We're organised, we create the documents, and we've also been prepared to put ourselves out there and say this is what we should be doing and this is how it should be done. And the rest of the world has copied. They've taken our stuff, and so what we did in the first place was the right thing. So I can't say I'm an imposter.
Real trailblazer right there. As far as following in Loretta's footsteps, yes, I come from a pretty much female-dominated area in my stats career, but I also had a referee career, and I also spent some considerable time being chairperson of Basketball New South Wales Tribunal. There would be occasionally some times where the male gender that was in the tribunal panel would try to put it over the female panel members sitting on the tribunal. I had to learn to wear my big girl pants very early on to get past that, because quite often they would just sit down and think that you were the female in the room, and therefore you were going to be a pushover and it wasn't going to be a problem for them, and that they would get to walk away scot-free from whatever incident that they had been reported for by the officiating fraternity. So for me, yeah, putting on the big girl pants very early on, I learned probably from Loretta, because she doesn't take any prisoners, and we have counterparts throughout throughout the country that are male quite often step up and say, we should do this and we should do that and we should do something else. But it's always the females that end up being the ones that drive that and get the job done. So I'd say, yeah, females are definitely in our area very strong.
I'm the odd one out. I commenced my refereeing career in a time that was extremely different to what it is now. There was no official rostering from BNSW. That just didn't happen. So I played in the women's team, and then it was always home and away route. So then I jumped on the men's game as soon as I can. Anyone that knows me for as long as I've been doing that would understand that I didn't really have much of a problem with my own words in my career. So no, I didn't feel like an imposter because I was quite confident when I refereed.
Who unpleasantly influenced you the most in your career and why?
So as a bit of a background, after that sort of era when I played, I obviously stepped away from the game when I had my family. So I had my daughter Shay, who's been with me since day dot. And then I had another child 2 years after that, and I was encouraged after that to come back by my local association to give them a hand to referee. So that was in about 96, I came back, but then I fell pregnant again, surprised, and had my last child in 99. And from that point, I was basically fast-tracked. I identified at the time, I've been the Commissioner for New South Wales for Board Independent. I feel like it's been a fan of mine, and also Sandra Mottram, who everyone knows from Nicholls for Cox, was great advocates for myself. And so the time that I came back after my child in 99, I was basically on the WNBL panel with me for years.
I suppose my journey was a different one. Who were my mentors? I would have to say my husband was my biggest mentor. When I met him, I didn't play sport at all. I didn't even own a pair of sand shoes. Yeah. He played basketball or refereed 6 nights a week, and on the 7th night he played squash, so there was not a lot of time in his life for me. So I went along and watched him ref and everybody else ref, and after 6 years of sitting on the sideline, I said, hand me a whistle, I can do that. I've never played, and I became a referee without ever having played the game. And I refed for quite a few years before I decided that I should probably learn how to play, or at least try, so I knew what it was like being on the other side of the whistle. I learned very, very quickly that I was no Michelle Cozier. I could not play basketball. So I stayed on the officiating side. So my biggest mentor would be my husband. On the more technical side, my biggest mentor would be Lauretta.
Look, I think at the end of the day, my biggest mentor is the game of basketball. Those of you who know me know that that's, I love the game. I love the game. I think that I was a pawn that came over from England when I was 11, and obviously I was advantaged. I could speak the language, looked very white, very pale. But one of the ways that I really quickly fitted into Australian society was with sport. It was the game of basketball. Now, I wasn't a very good player. I did play with Bankstown Bruins, and they were a superstar team, so I sort of tagged along, and I loved playing. And so when I do stats, and I keep saying I'm going to retire, I keep saying this morning I was over at a game, I keep saying I'm going to retire. I do it for the game. I love the sport, and I get so excited that I know that when we're doing a good job, we're helping the game grow. And so that really is what pushes me, inspires me every day is the sport and the opportunities that I've had. You know, I've looked after the Sydney Olympics and the Paralympics. And I still like to tell the story of the fact that, you know, I was sitting there watching, supervising, and I'm pretty sure that Trish was on, I put her on that game. But, you know, and Lauren Jackson pulled Lisa Leslie's hair and that was the rat's tail and threw it on the ground. And I was there walking at the dome, walking on the court underneath when Vince Carter did the dunk over the French player's head. I've seen all that. I went to the Paralympics. I've been to two Commonwealth Games. We've been to the Goodwill Games. I've had so many opportunities because of the sport, and I love the game. And if I keep doing stats, it's more about how can I add value to the game, because I can't run up and down anymore. I couldn't shoot anyway, so it didn't make any difference. So this is a way that I can, and I do believe that I can contribute to the sport, and so that's what inspires me, and that's my mentor, I suppose.
So we're going to go one by one. So Trish, you're up first. Hope I prepped you enough. Can you talk us a little bit through your officiating pathway and just name some of the most memorable moments in your career thus far?
The Olympics.
Yes, the Sydney Olympics is definitely my most memorable. I suppose my pathway with my stats career has been my biggest contribution to basketball. Like Loretta, I've been given multiple opportunities to see things that I wouldn't normally see by having the best seats in the house, because we get to sit in the front row. And pretty much when the Olympics were coming up, I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to see as much basketball as I would like to, because tickets weren't exactly cheap. So I came down the technical officials pathway, and back in 2000, early 2000, we still had snail mail. That's how you got notified that you was made the squad, and it came in the mail, and I didn't even check the mailbox that day. My next door neighbour came in and asked me, "Did you make the squad? Did you make the squad?" And I read it, and I honestly didn't think I would make the squad. I thought I'd make the Paralympic squad, but to make the Olympic team for stats was, you know, an absolute career highlight. Going on to do Goodwill Games, Pacific Games, Commonwealth Games. I was just at the Pacific Games last Monday in the Solomon Islands, and it gives me a great opportunity to teach other countries and other people around Oceania about statistics and why we keep them and why the coaches need them and the teams need them. And I've got to travel to multiple countries that I wouldn't have been given the opportunity to see. I didn't even know Guam was a place on the map until they sent me there. So yeah, to be Guam, Samoa, Solomon Islands, Fiji, PNG, I've been to probably 5 times. Great opportunities, even if you choose not to stay in the refereeing pathway, there are other pathways that can take you around the world.
I'd just like to say that when we were picking the squad for the Olympics and the Paralympics, and Lorraine came up to me very later and said, "Oh, I want that Trish Nicholls. I'd like her to be one of those hostage team liaison officers." Like, "No, you can't. I'm paying her all the stats thing." She loves that thing. She goes, "No, I think she'd be really good. She's so nice and friendly. I'll have her as a team liaison." I said, "No, Lorraine, I'm going to have her on my bench." So there you go.
So, what are some of the positive changes that you've seen happen during your time in stats and keep bringing them?
I guess it's something unique, like you guys are so strong.
We are, yeah. So when we started doing statistics, it was pre-computers. and we would sit courtside and put little ticks and crosses on pages, and we'd have steals and assists and turnovers, and then at the end of the game we would sit there for 40 minutes with a calculator, adding them all up, making it balanced to the score sheet. I suppose in 1999 we had the nationals at Penrith, and I said to Loretta, we're going computers. And it was the first time we did computerised stats. We didn't have laptops, and we actually farted around full-size monitors from court to court to record the stats. So I suppose we've come a long way as far as computer equipment. We've come a long way in defining our definitions, as Loretta talked about earlier. We've also learned that we can use a variety of different software packages in what we do. As long as we use the foundations that were written back in the early days, we can reapply it to any program that they throw at us. The Olympic Games uses a different software package to the Commonwealth Games. We had the Women's World Championships here last year. They gave us yet another software package. What we can say is that what we've written is highly adaptable, and we can just keep on using it.
And I'll just add, we created our own back in 1993. We created a calling protocol. And that was basically so that the one person could be capturing what's happening in both ends of the court. And so there was the one caller. Some countries still use two callers, and you can imagine we could start arguing about whether it was a steal or a turnover, or it was a shot missed, or it's a rebound and the block and everything else like that. And we've developed this calling protocol, and as Trish said, we can adapt that to any new software. And once again, FIBA has stolen what we've done because it's so efficient. You know, you have to say Australian are trailblazers in the area of stats. Really, it's important that you see that, because they're always amazed at what we come up with. I'm going to Geneva the end of next month for our next workshop, and I know it'll be, show us your assessments, show us what you've been doing, because everything that we do is validated as being very, very successful in the development of statisticians across the world.
And Trish, you've worked on tribunals for a while now. My last question is, how have you noticed the impact of working on tribunals committees, and how that can better support fellow referees throughout the league as well?
I'm very keen on tribunals, as Loretta's is. I think that being a tribunal panel member and chairing so many tribunals over the years, I learned to see it in a very black and white way. The official would not have written up a report if the player had been doing the right thing in the first place. But navigating through the scenarios of what happened and what went down on the night by speaking with the officials and then letting the charged person have their say is you've got to give fair justice. So you've got to allow them to have their time and explain what they believe happened. The advancement of having video footage has seriously helped on the tribunal panel process. I think moving forward, and I've said now for many, many years, we don't teach our officials how to manage that step of the process. They know how to write up a report, but when they're face to face with being put on the spot by me saying to you, well, what happened last night? Why are we here? What did you see? Our younger officials get very nervous and they don't know what to say, and we haven't prepped them well enough. And moving forward, I'd like to work with Basketball New South Wales with the official fraternity to give you some knowledge on what you need to say so that you get your message across clearly and that we can deal with it and the appropriate sentence, if it's required, is handed out. Sometimes it's very hard to get that from our young officials who are nervous, who have never been to a tribunal before. And I think that that's moving forward, something that we could definitely improve on in that space.
Great. Thank you very much, Trish. Alison, I have some questions for you now. You came up through a very male-dominated time in officiating. Can you talk us through your officiating pathway and give us a piece of advice that you would like to receive back then?
So, yes, that's for any of you that don't know, I've been on the WNBL panel before. One thing that's been really good about this particular day is I've had to sit down and actually try and navigate what I did and when, because it hasn't been anything that I've ever kept a record of. So from the time I think there was about 12-month period between the time I made WNBL to when I made the NBL. And at the time that I was coming through at that level, there was probably only 2 female officials in New South Wales that were vying for that sort of next progression. And that was myself and Megan Thompson. To this day, I hang my hat on my skateboard because I beat Megan by 7 days as the first female equal in New South Wales at the Games. And from that time, I think it was Megan and I for quite a few seasons that there had been 2 previous female officials, Carolyn from South Australia, and she became another name that and Sharon Arnold, who I'm very good friends with in Victoria, but they have since retired from the NBL panel. And whether or not that was their choice is a question you'll need to ask them as well. It was very difficult to maintain a position on the men's panel, but it was extremely male orientated. We talk about the struggles that we have now as female officials, but I think the opportunity that you feel in it now you should really appreciate. There was no such thing as female change rooms. There was no compensation made for myself or Megan refereeing in the NBL. Even to the point that when we first took over the WNBL at the Sydney Uni, we would have our pre-game and our post-game in the men's toilet sitting around the urinal. Like, it was horrendous. And the NBL was a step further again, where it was like open change rooms, and that's what you dealt with. And the men to the point who would actually do that stuff in front of you to test you, will see how well you will poke you because they didn't appreciate female on the cabinet. Amen.
Sorry, Alison, and what's a piece of advice that you would give to younger people?
I don't think we teach resilience very well. I think we find excuses for social media and the big stress levels that we're under, but we don't teach you girls to be resilient. You need to be tougher. That's just personal opinion. We seem to want to try and find excuses or blame third party when we need to understand that there's so many things in our pathways that we can't control. How we react to what happens is under your control, but what happens with appointments, what happens with where you're sent, what happens with the opportunity that you're given is either luck, but you can't control it, and you need to accept that and move on.
Alison, can you talk us through some of your favourite moments as an official?
I'm going back. As I said, I had a really quick progression once I decided to come back to refereeing, where Trish has just highlighted that sort of thing. I had all these years, I was like, what year did I do big?
2 o'clock.
Yeah, so it was, so I went to Ivor Birch in 97, and even up until that point, that was at Newcastle, which was then held with the 18s, but it was so segregated. So the Ivor Birch officials stayed at the local pub, and the championship officials stayed at the West Executive Inn. Completely different areas. There was no segregation between the officials at all, and it was a real them and us like mentality. And from there I then went to 18 to Penrith, and then I went to 20s in Adelaide, with me up from there for lovely. And the next year I went to 20s in Brisbane, and that was where I was pushed through the WNBL panel. What was the question?
I think some of your favourite memories.
Yeah, so that was good. Obviously, my first WNBL game was at the State Sports Centre here, and it was this huge venue, and there must have been 10 people there, and it was all my family and friends. We went to Tributes Place first, we lived in Newington, and then we went to the stadium, and it was like, on one blush up, we didn't even get shirts. You had to hand your shirt back at the end of the game. And it was just quite funny to have this huge venue and no people. So it was, I remember that. I remember receiving the Basketball Australia Female Referee of the Year at the 18 session area. The accommodation was quite good. And that is a totally different story again, but Jeffrey knows all about that as well. I was offered I had a position at the Youth Olympics. You got is that better? See, it's so hard to get the information. And I've had 2 FIBA tournaments where I went to the Oceania and Suba, Fiji, and I also went to, when you talk about not knowing what wild means, I went to Saipan, in the Northern Marianas. Like it was a beautiful island, but it was really third world. And the stories that I could tell you from Fiji, you need the accommodation, but I've been very lucky with some of the ones that are in this.
Lauretta, would you be able to talk us through your officiating pathway?
The officiating pathway. It's easy. Oh, the one that I've made. Okay, so as I said, I began back in 1983, and I think, look, I was very fortunate. I had a very good relationship playing at Bankstown and had a really good relationship with Lorraine. I was at the university training to be a teacher at the time, so I had a lot of time on my hands. I think she realised that I was someone that would push something forward. So obviously we formed the Basketball Australia Stats Committee in 1992. It was 1991, and started pulling everything together, getting things ready for 1994 with the Women's World Cup. And I chaired the committee, and I'm still chairing the committee even today. It's something no one else wants to take on. And yes, and then we decided we were going to have a representative from each of the states. Norma Backick was for New South Wales with me for a long time, and when I then got asked to look after the Paralympics and the Olympics, Norma was my 2IC in that event. And then after the Olympics, we did have the Goodwill Games and a number of other tournaments, but Norma decided to stand down, but I decided to sort of stay with it and continued, and that's when Trish became involved. And I think that I was very fortunate with Trish coming on board, because it gave me a bit of a powerhouse to sort of push some other stuff through. I was also blessed that there was a bit of a change in the Victorian crew down there. We had another young woman take on the role, Tracy Tunisian. And once again, so we were able to push some stuff through. We started I started writing to Basketball Australia demanding that stats and score table be allowed to go to nationals. I'm saying we've got these players and these players aren't getting quality personnel at these championships and they're the best in the country. Well, why aren't we doing that? I remember I was at I think it was the 16s in Canberra, and I was in the office and the big country coach came in and said, Lorraine, can you guarantee me someone on the final that can do the 24-second shot clock? And she actually said no. And that's where we were at. And so we were pushing Basketball Australia. We said that we have to have a stats and a score table rep to go to every nationals. They go along with the team. They worked their little tushes off, that's for sure, but it was a great opportunity, A, to raise the profile of stats and score table, but also to sort of provide a pathway. So that was a really big step that we got through. We then had the Commonwealth Games running down in Victoria, and then we've obviously subsequently had the Com Games up in the Gold Coast, and we've had the Asia Cup and the World Cup. And can I say, look, I love to bag on the VIX. It must have been from my playing days because we used to get belted by the VIX all the time. But, in many ways we know that Victoria is the leader in the sport in terms of participation and performance. But at the end of the day, I tell you what, in the area of stats and score table, we leave the VIX for dead. Absolutely leave the VIX for dead in terms of development and everything. So I always like to bang that trombone very loudly. In 2016, FIBA asked me, so they decided they were going to have a stats workshop. They recognised that there had become greater interest in the betting, again, watching the sport, and they'd had a few really bad experiences at World Cups and Olympics, not in the ones that we've had, of course. And of course, they also were creating these new pathways where we have the FIBA qualifiers, that they decided they were going to get representatives from each of the zones from stats to come in and really develop what we call our FIBA stats licence. And so Oceana asked me to go over. I went over in 2016. Interestingly, that's where I was the only woman there. So every other representative from all the other zones was male. And interestingly enough too, none of them had been players too. So I sort of, once again, echoing what Michelle was saying about being a player and then taking on that technical role, none of them were players, and so sometimes they had to listen to my rationale about why a stat was the way it was from the player's perspective. And so we created our FIBA licence, which you now can get for 2 years, put together a load of resources, and then I came back, and currently Australia has 275 active FIBA licences in the area of stats. And when you start comparing that with places like Europe, and you think about Europe's population, now I know they have 672 or something, so 3 times ours, but there's no way our population equates with what Europe's got with the numbers that we have. And of course, we've always suffered a little bit from the tyranny of distance in terms of getting competition, and that's once again why Basketball New South Wales needs to be applauded, because we got the Women's World Cup and we got the Asia Cup. Basketball Australia likes to take credit for it, but it was Basketball New South Wales that did all the work and obviously was successful. So as I said, and I continue to be a part of the FIBA team, and I suppose the other thing, I was also nominated to be on Basketball New South Wales Board. I've served 3 terms, so it's coming up for 10 years I've been on, and once again it's been a great opportunity for me to absolutely go on and on and on about the role of our technical officials, talking about the opportunities for referees, talking about the opportunities for score table and stats, and pushing forward that agenda, because they can't have the game these days without you. And recognising that, and of course celebrating the opportunities that we have with young women. It's a high priority for FIBA, and certainly Basketball New South Wales is to be congratulated on all they've done to really focus on young women and the opportunities they have as technical officials.
So this one's kind of for all of you. You've each got a bit of a unique situation having children within our realm of officiating as well. I was wondering if each of you could touch on experiences that you had with your children on the court, and Lauretta, you recently part of the Commonwealth Games with your daughter as well, and Trish as well, and then the officiating pathway as well for Alison and her children.
Well, there's some good things about having children that play. I mean, it was great. Both my children have played and been quite successful, and certainly my son's gone on and represented at the state level, and I got to go to nationals and sat on stats bench at nationals, which has been very good. And I've been a manager as well, and one of the good things about me doing stats is I have to keep my mouth shut. It's allowed me to watch the game, but I have to sort of keep concentrating on filling up the water bottles and giving out towels rather than giving a commentary to the referee or giving a commentary to the coach about what they should be doing. So, so I've been involved at every level, and I remember I think it was a Kings game. It was at the Sydney Entertainment Centre, and one of our people hadn't turned up, or there was a problem. So I said to my daughter, Emma, get down here, I need your help, because we were really short. She obviously has a very good instinct and understanding of the game, and it was a player, and she's a bit of a basketball nerd, and she just clicked and could get it. And so all of a sudden, I was dragging her to all of these games and doing these games, and I know that Trish was doing the same with her daughter, they're extremely competent, very, very talented statisticians. The only person that Emma is not allowed to evaluate and criticise is her mother, because she tries. Sometimes she'll tell me, no, I don't agree with you, and I'll say, no, you don't listen. You're not going to tell me what to do. But no, she's a very, very good official, look, it's quite difficult sometimes. Both of them got selected to the gold, when we went to the Com Games of the Gold Coast. And it's very, very difficult because Trish and I were there as coaches and evaluators and responsible. And how do you put your children on, when you're rostering them, on the gold medal final? Because what do people think? What judgments are they going to make? Even though everyone probably knew that they were clearly in the top 4, without doubt, probably, top 4. It was really difficult to say to them, I'm sorry, I'm not going to put you on the gold medal game because it's not going to be seen as kosher. It will be seen as favouritism. So in many ways, look, I think both of them, both Olivia and Emma, have missed out a couple of times because of the profile that Trish and I have, which is kind of problematic. But I suppose I'm very confident that they continue to be involved. No matter what we ask them to do, they'll go and run off and do stats wherever. And they're very, very good at what they do. And so when I do step down, I think that they'll probably get more opportunities than they've been given, because that has been a bit of a stumbling block.
100%. Com Games was hard.
And you're going to make a great deal. You'll try and start to say, oh, yes, would too, we could.
There you go, I'm good now, she's got a pinch me. I've received one of those before. And then we came back to Sydney and we had the championships for the Women's World Championships. And my daughter was again performing really well and was sitting in a prime position. Again, it made it very difficult for us to put her there. And she got COVID. Yeah. So she missed out again. That's it.
I suppose something that hasn't probably been touched on, and I confident either Anna or Reed or having a family when you're active as referees, it's extremely difficult. Shay's been with me since day dot. She was like my little tag along wherever I went. And juggling that and where you are in your pathway at that time is extremely difficult. And that as well is either good luck or bad luck. The opportunity to gain a FIBA license is totally out of your control. And what age has a big factor. And sometimes when you're the right age, you're pregnant, or you've got a newborn, or you've got a toddler. So as a female, that's also another juggling factor that we have to do, and again, it's out of your control. I was extremely fortunate that I had my mother, but I was a single mum for most of my refereeing career, which is probably one of the reasons that Shay tagged along as much as what she did, because I either had to rely on my mum to look after my 3 kids, or they came with me wherever I went. Because when I was trying to crack the National League, as a country official, I would leave home on Saturday morning. Shay would be in the front seat, which was totally legal in those days. She would have the iPad going with the movie, and we would watch the movie the whole way down the freeway, wherever we went, and I would have a game in Sydney somewhere Saturday night, we'd have accommodation somewhere, and then we'd have another game on Sunday in Sydney somewhere, and then we'd drive home at ridiculous hours on Sunday afternoon. But in saying that Shay was with me most of the time, I didn't see my 2 boys for weekend after weekend after weekend. So I was of the choice that I had my children later in life, but it then took away an opportunity to be able to get my FIBA license. And some choose to have their families younger in life, and that could therefore have an impact. So it's I would say don't try and juggle that stuff. It is what it is. You don't know if and when those opportunities are going to come. Just do the best that you can when you're given any opportunity.
And just a last question for all of you. Following your long careers, you've now chosen to continue educating the younger generation. What's a key piece of advice you'd give to younger officials and technical officials coming up?
Tell us the research.
Resilience. We need to, as Michelle said earlier, we don't need to change who we are, but we need to accept that we can't control everything. And whether or not we like what we're given, as far as appointments and opportunities, you can't control it. So again, think whatever game that you're rostered to is your last, enjoy it for what it is, and be grateful for any opportunities that you.
I look around the room today, and there's so many of you that I have seen come past me as a referee, coach or mentor. I'm sure I've given you all an individual piece of advice at some point or other. The best advice that I can give you is pretty much what has come across the room today, and that is to be yourself, but to be your best self. Make sure that you turn up mentally prepared for your day. And that's hard, and we've heard from the young mums here today about how hard that is to get in the car with a screaming toddler who wants to go to McDonald's, and you don't have time to get to McDonald's because you need to get to the game and prep and get yourself organised. Some of you obviously aren't at that stage yet where you've got a young family, but you still have other things in your life, and maybe the boyfriend that you had a fight with last night. You take that on the court, it's going to show. You need to turn up mentally prepared for your game. That would be my best piece of advice for you moving forward.
I suppose my piece of advice is just keep being involved. I mean, it's something special being involved in sport, and we're not all going to be Lauren Jacksons as players, or Jan Sterlings as coaches. We're not going to have that opportunity. But remember, yes, it's about the players, but at the end of the day, the players can't play without you guys and what you do. And whether it's on at the local competition level, or it's NBL 1 or WNBL or NBL, or it's FIBA, you make a difference. And our sport can't happen without you, and it is the greatest sport. And so keep that in mind, that they need me, and as Trish just said, I'm going to do the very best job that I can. So it doesn't matter if it's D grade on a Monday night, or it's or you're refereeing, or you're doing the score table or stats on an elite game. You do really make a difference. I often bang on about volunteers. Referees get paid, score table and stats get paid at various leagues, but it doesn't really equate to the time and the effort and the training that you've put in. And we understand that. And what I say, you are volunteers. And the sport cannot manage without those volunteers and that grassroots. So stay involved. It's really worth it in the long term. I can't get away from it. So that's a good.
Any other questions?
Yes. Alright. Here you go, got one pen. There we go. Cool. Alright, first one is for Alison. I heard that at a national tournament once, you had a coach that wouldn't speak to you purely because you were a female. Talk us through that and how you dealt with it.
Now that is in at the Oceanian Summit.
Yep.
And we were doing brief medicine on a men's game, and a lot of the a lot of the countries, the coaches don't like females. I was the critic on the game, and I had the other Australian referee was male, and then I can't remember whether one of the exactly. And he had a question that he obviously wasn't happy at half time. So he was trying to call over, I was working with Drew Banks from Canberra, and he was trying to call Drew over. And just wanted to speak to him and ask him a question. And Drew took a step towards, if you're on the opposite side of the Goddess yard, Drew took a step to go and answer him, and I basically grabbed him by his hair and said, "Do not move." I'm the critic. If he wants to speak to him, speak to him. So when a good 30 seconds where he'd go, and I'd go, and he'd go, and I go, here, and he'd go, and I go. So in the end, he gave up, and he went, but he still refused to speak to me, and he went, but his translator come down and ask the questions for me. Yeah, you just shit. Alison, how did you deal with him? Like, what did you do mentally? I just thought it was hilarious. Like, I knew he could speak English, and he knew that I knew he could speak English, but he just wouldn't speak. He just asked all these questions, sort of, I just had a bit of evil doubt in Singapore. It's like funny.
Malot's that. Have you ever had something like that happen again?
No.
Good. Listen. Trish, you have worked with a lot of referees in New South Wales. What is one of the funniest moments? You don't have to name the referee, and if you want, and why? Please do name the referee. Name or shame.
Funnily enough, it was with a male referee. And I had to have the uncomfortable talk about hygiene and washing your shirt. It's part and parcel with what we do as coaches. Don't want one of yours. But the young official that it was actually came from my home association. And he was quite horrified. He didn't actually understand that we'd had the general chat in the room with everybody. But then I took him aside and we had an additional chat. And it was really quite sad because he didn't understand that it was him. Yeah, pretty much, yeah. But he came back the following year and his pants were the right length and I couldn't see his white socks. And he'd gone home and had the chat with his mum about washing shirts and personal hygiene, and I suppose it was a funny but not funny, because it was a difficult chat to have, but to see that person grow, because I took the hard line and explained to them what it means to look after yourself. I suppose it was a funny moment for me, because the following year I took one look at this person and said, "Who are you?" Because he was a different child, a different young person.
Loretta, you are incredibly successful in the statistician world and is following in your footsteps. What is the best place basketball has taken you and why?
Best place basketball to take it all. Oh, look.
I'd like to move on.
Look, I suppose it's really basketball gave me my husband, and he's hanging around, he's whinging, he's sending me messages because he's sick of waiting for me. Look, as I said, I was fortunate enough to play at Bankstown, and I was at uni at the time. My husband, who wasn't my husband then, had come over as Bob Alison and brought him over to play with Robbie Cadee. And he managed to get a consulting, he was an engineer and he just finished at uni and got a consulting job at the University of New South Wales. And there was doing some work then with University of Sydney, and I was going to the University of Sydney, and so Robbie said, "Oh, Loretta, can you just take him around, because he doesn't know how to get on the trains." I still don't know how to get on the trains, but anyway. And look, I met him, and the rest is history. How many years later, I can't even begin. I mean, we just had our wedding anniversary, and I still can't remember how many years it is, but I'm not telling you either because I'm too old. But, I was blessed to have someone in my life that loved the game as much as I do. So when we go over and visit his family, we go to different games, obviously, and he's coming to Geneva with me, and he's been tagged along. He used to do stats with me, but then I used to argue with him too much, so he's not allowed to do it, but he did have to do it with me this morning. So look, I've been very fortunate with that, and of course, my two children. My son tried to play soccer, that didn't last for very long, and Emma even tried to do some dancing, and that didn't last very long. We gave them that experience, but I didn't like the cold mornings with soccer, and I certainly didn't like the time putting the hair gel in and the eye makeup on everything for the dancing. So luckily my children made the right decision and they got involved with basketball, so I'd have to say my family.
Right, so last question. The reason why you guys just paid this away panel was obviously you guys prefer us to be paperweight for everyone. What was the most challenging part of your careers?
Look, I think from a stats point of view, and Trish will agree with me, it was, I used to get mad because I'd say stats aren't important until the end of the game. And all of a sudden, the coaches were going to be polite to you because they wanted a copy of the stats. And so for a long time, we really sat on the periphery. The amount of concentration and focus that you have to have in order to get it right, every single action being analysed so that you give every player the exact stat that they deserve, is really quite demanding. But it was always that we weren't important. They'd obviously sometimes give us a drink, and where we got sat on the stats bench, the fact we had to get there early and set up all the equipment, and it was always us worrying about the paper and the printer and everything else, loading new versions of the software and everything, and we were never important until the end of the game. I think that's really been the big stumbling block that I've seen. It's very different now. It's certainly, they know that the dollars that are coming into our sport are based on what we capture every game. That's what they want to know about. So we have a lot more leverage than we used to, but I think that would have been it for me.
I'd have to agree. Obviously now with the betting and the integrity of what we do, obviously we don't have a team that we cheer for or back because we have to be neutral.
I try.
She does try. She gets pinched too. But yeah, I think the onset of the betting has changed the face of what we do with basketball and with stats, and I think that's moving forward been a difficult stumbling block for us to get over. Even now when we walk into do an NBL game, we actually have to hand over our telephones so that we are not in contact with the outside world, because we are privy to information about the teams that are playing that could influence the betting, and I think that's definitely changed the face of what we do. Whether it's for good or bad, it's not here to say, I think.
My biggest challenge as a female official was to make the males believe that I had any talent, or that I could hold my own. I wanted to be on the floor with the males, but I hated when they tried to look after me. Like, so trying to prove, you know, to the other 30 odd males on the panel that he could do the job as a female was tough.
So thank you, lovely ladies. Thank you for your time. Greatly appreciate it. And for your trouble as well. I think all of you that come keeping the lead asking questions have come from very far north of New South Wales. We will have another 10-minute break now. There's different food coming. It would be balls around food. And then next you are stuck with myself, but also lovely Rachel, as we're going to run you through a workshop on resilience and wellbeing. So yeah, thank you.